Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. I am extremely excited to have a time to spend some time with Dean Frew. Dean Frew is the Chief Technology Officer and Senior Vice President of RFID Solutions at the SML Technologies Group. Known Dean for a long, long time, and I'm really excited to get into his background, his history, his thoughts on the industry, and all things related to both on-shelf availability, and specifically we'll be focusing today on the topic of radio frequency identification at retail. Before we get too far into this, I want to kick it over to Matt Pfeiffer. Matt is the head of the conversations on retail. He's got a couple of special things that he wants to share with us before we start on today's podcast. Matt, go ahead.
We're so excited that you're here, and we just want to let everyone know that the On-Shelf Availability Group and Series is presented by the University of Arkansas. The On-Shelf Availability, as I said, in 2022 and 2020, undergraduate supply chain program was ranked number 1 in North America by Gartner, which is a leading global research firm. This ranking is highly respected throughout industry, which makes University of Arkansas graduates very sought after as they move on to internships and careers. As stated by Gartner, this number 1 ranking is reflective of inclusion of global content, great popularity within the industry, robust program size, strong internship, inter-co-op partnership, and starting salary. So for more information about the supply chain program, you can see the link there below.
It doesn't hurt that they're co-located in Northwest Arkansas with companies like Walmart and JB Hunt either. Just wanted to throw that out there for what it's worth. All right.
We're also excited to celebrate our featured sponsor for this particular meetup, which is BrainCorp. BrainCorp knows that retailers want to operate smarter, but with many solutions, add complexities and not efficiencies. With over 26,000 robots deployed across 5 continents, BrainCorp is helping retailers with frictionless deployment of robots at scale to automate tasks like inventory management. Already powering the world's largest fleet of robotic inventory scanners, BrainCorp is now excited to offer retailers its analytics solution called BrainOS Inventory Insights, developed in partnership with Google Cloud. BrainOS Inventory Insights creates a true end-to-end solution for analyzing the inventory data collected by BrainOS, our robots, so retailers can quickly respond to out-of-stock and low-stock events and assess product details such as product location, planogram compliance, and price tag compliance. So for more information, you can contact Gavin Donnelly there at BrainCorp.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's podcast. One of the things that we want to do is just kind of give you a little bit of ground rules. We've got a lot of folks who had conflicts for the day, but we do have a number of people. It looks like we got about 24 folks on the line right now. So we want you to make this as active as we can. I'm going to be asking Dean a number of questions based upon his years of experience, both in the retail as well as technology efforts. We would encourage you, if you do have a question, you are all on basically on the mute status. If you have a question, click the question and answer button in Zoom, and we will be able to catch those questions and be able to deliver it for you. Secondly, at the end, we are going to go ahead and stop the recording, and if there are some open discussion things that you would like to ask that won't go as part of the normal broadcast that we will distribute, we will certainly allow you to come on mute and literally verbally ask the questions. Last but not least, every time we do this, we want to make sure that we are certainly being very diligent when it comes to federal antitrust. So if anything looks like pricing or competitive or things that discuss things like margins and discounts, we will definitely call a halt to that because we do want to make sure this is done under antitrust guidelines. With that, I'm going to open it up and basically open it up and introduce my friend Dean that I've already done a little bit. I'm going to stop sharing because at the end of the day, we're not going to have a lot more screens and things to share. But Dean, you have been in this area for 20 years or so. You've been leading a lot of very incredible retail technology companies. You are now the CTO from the SML Corporation. You got a lot of customers, and I'm sure we'll get into some examples here in a little bit. But just tell us about yourself before we kind of open it up for some specific questions around on-shelf availability.
Yeah, you bet. And thanks again, Matt and Mike, for the opportunity to talk to you guys today and for the audience taking time. So Dean Frew, background in RFID going all the way back to Texas Instruments. Started a company focused as I was part of the tech development, tech standards at MIT and part of another company. Thought that there was something going on with UHF, and so started a company called Extraprise, venture funded, bought it back from the VCs in 2010 and then sold it to SML in 2013, and was president of a software division and then ultimately took on the CTO role. So again, SML, one of the top providers of encoded RFID tags in the market, and one of the top, if not the top, provider of RFID solutions for stores, for inventory management and store operations. Headquartered here in frozen Dallas today, thawing Dallas, I should say. But my team has offices in Singapore, Sweden, France, Dubai, UK, US, Mexico, and Hong Kong and China. So we're seeing dramatic increase in interest around the world, and excited to be on the call today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So suffice it to say, you've been in this technology area for a while. You've been at SML obviously for a while, but in addition to that, and one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure that you came on is you're just as much as a business partner as you are a technologist. You think about things from a business perspective. You think about, and a lot of the questions we're going to be talking about today are business driven. So I think that's really going to be important for us to do. So before we get into the actual topic of RFID and some of the things that we do with SML, I'm going to ask you to put your customer hat on, because we've all been customers before. And at the end of the day, I think it's a great way to think about the business when you're engaging with that. But I've asked this almost every time with folks who've been on the podcast, which is, have you had an experience where you wanted something for your own personal use, and you got frustrated because the store said they had it, they couldn't find it, you had this website say it was available, then it became a odd shelf availability or out of stock issue? I'm sure you've got a story, because everybody does. Do you have one that you can share with us from a customer perspective about this?
Yeah, definitely. The one I won't talk about is the fact that it took me 10 months to get my pickup truck. Okay, so we won't talk about that one.
That's because you bought the wrong one, Dean. But
I bought the right one this time. Okay. But it happens all the time. And we have a distributed family, and so ordering things and having things shipped, ordering things and having someone try to go pick it up is something that happens all the time for us. And example this Christmas, someone saying that they had the product, then they told us they didn't, so we reordered it, and then it showed up anyway. Okay, I won't mention the retailer.
No,
but basically, we're seeing this all the time, and it's as we look across the problem, my wife goes, "How come these guys aren't using what you guys do?" And I said, "It's a great question. Put that in your response back to them when you give comment." Yeah. But it's happening everywhere. Everybody is scrambling to meet the new model where you're using every one of your existing inventory stores, whether it be a store, a DC, or direct from factory, to fulfill orders. And we're seeing it in clothing. We see it in personally, clothing, furniture, shoes. Some people are doing better. Some people don't make promises that they can't keep, and they'll just tell you honestly when it's going to show up, and it tends to have done it. I've seen that now with two different footwear vendors, where they just tell you, we don't have it now, but we'll have it to you in a week and a half. Okay, I can live with that. Not I'm going to get it now. And then quickly continue to see, we're huge Amazon Prime people, and we continue to see them set the bar on, they tend to have less problems, as our observation, than what some other people have had.
Yep.
So anyway, we're all in the same boat, I think. Struggling through trial and error. Returns has become a part of my life. Okay, more so than it was even 2 years ago. So say more
about that. You mean personally or from a business perspective? Yeah,
personally. Yeah, okay. I mean both, but personally, the whole concept of, I think the Frew family has adopted the buy three, figure out which one fits, and then send two of them back. I've seen that be a behavioral change inside our clan. And so the whole concept of returns is a normal weekly process for us now.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. And I think we need to probably retouch on that when we get a little later into solutions, because obviously RFID has some potential to help track that better than what we've had in the past.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the things that, unfortunately, I was unable to attend NRF this year. Dean, I believe you were as well, because you had some other stuff going on. But a lot of excitement. If I heard one word, I heard it 1,000 times from the folks that I talked to who attended NRF, which is RFID is here to stay. RFID is now sort of like the old UPC barcode. I mean, if you're not in that certain business, you better be, or you won't become relevant. So what are some of the things that you heard coming out of NRF specifically as it relates to RFID?
Yeah, I mean, clearly there wasn't much discussion around how does this work. I think that was one of the big takeaways that our team had, is the discussions were around those retailers that, you know, as we say, have come to acknowledge they have a problem. And that problem is they can't continue to use an annual PI count as the basis for their ERP system's inventory ledger. And throughout the rest of the year. And not everybody has come to that, but we're seeing a growing number every year, whether it be a retail expo in London, or whether it be in Dubai, or whether it be here in the US at NRF. We're continuing to see retailers who are focused on the right thing, which is the fact that they have a fundamental problem of running their business. There's always going to be excitement about some of the things that we're working on, but when it comes down to it, the fundamental element is, if you know what you have, then you know what to replenish and you know what to commit to customers. And coming up with simple solutions for that is what we found customers interested in. And again, for us, trying to focus them onto that fundamental issue, because everything else doesn't matter. Doing customer experience, doing self-checkout, all those things, doing loss prevention, doesn't matter if you're not doing that fundamental element.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. So what I hear quite a bit is there's a whole hierarchy of capability that this particular technology, it allows you to know at a very high level of accuracy, what do you have and where is it located? By the way, that particular information can also be provided to your customers in a way that allows them to be able to purchase product. Dr. Hargrave from the University of Memphis calls that researching online, buying in store. I've also heard it called reserve online, pick up in store, but exposing those on hands for customers. But let's just talk through this. The inventory accuracy has always been the base of the triangle. We got to know what we have and what we know we have, where it's located. It seems to be a little bit of a shift now, where I'm seeing some retailers that say, no, I need to know that, but not necessarily for customer. I need to know that for asset protections or inventory accuracy purposes of where is my inventory becoming inaccurate. Your response to that, because I'm seeing a lot more of that from a retail perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think any of the asset protection, what stuff do I have where, is a component of what we see from customers, but the biggest one is them looking to the consumer relationship and seeing how do they improve that, which ultimately they've associated with increase in sales. Okay, and better customer satisfaction. So, while there's somebody on the committee that's interested in that, the one who has the loudest voice based on our experience are those that are saying, I need to reduce my cancel rates on BOPUS. I need to make sure my out of stocks are almost zero in the store. I need to make it so that I really understand what I'm doing as far as receiving in my store. And because if I can do those three things, then I am going to sell more product. I'm going to satisfy more customers rather than operational things inside the business about how many items do I have, more asset protection side of things.
Yep. And I think you guys have done an incredible job of understanding that entire flow, which is, so walk us through the SML solution, if you will. If I'm a brand new retailer, because it's not just I want stuff and I get the on hands right. That's certainly the foundational element. but everything from I'm able to receive product in and account for it. I'm able to move it from the back of the store to the sales floor and I can account for it. I can see it's left the store. The thing we were just talking about, returns. This is going to be a big, broad question, but how does SML deliver those kind of capabilities? Because that's what retailers really want.
Yeah, and our philosophy is pretty simple, and that is that once you've made the investment to put the RFID data carrier on your product, it's ourselves in a stewardship responsibility are to provide you as much value for that investment as we can. Okay. It's just like, my new truck. If I just use my new truck to commute to the office, then it's not that valuable. But my new truck carrying all my stuff into the mountains and whatever, I want to try to do as much as I can with that asset. Mm-hmm. And so our philosophy has been to continue to expand and to grow the use of item level RFID in the store. So it starts out with stock count. It starts out with receiving. It starts out with moving from front to back. It starts out with stock lookup and Geiger counter finding. Then it's moving into replenishment. It's moving into markdowns. It's moving into BOPUS. Last year, this time of year, we bought a company out of Sweden, Sumzed, and we've added a complete customer experience line. Mm-hmm. So smart dressing room, kiosks, point of information terminals, BOPUS pickup kiosks, and also self-checkout and associate level assisted checkout using RFID. Then as we started seeing that, one of the things we've been involved in a long time is the supply chain. Mm-hmm. And so what we started seeing is all of our retailers, the thousands and thousands of stores that are out there using Clarity in the store, they started to recognize that there was value, and as we had as well, up in the supply chain. And so, we've made strategic investments in that space because we believe it's a natural to help the client extend their return on investment at a marginal cost, because the most important part is already there. So we've done supply chain work with multiple brands and retailers now, and things like being able to read hundreds of items in a box in 1 second at 100% accuracy, and do that at speed so that you're at 1,000 cases an hour. Okay. And so, for us, it's basically tying all that together into a complete suite of functionality that leverages item level. And I would tell you that the way we talk about this and what we're seeing is this is not about RFID. It's about the move from SKU to item level. Mm. Okay. And yep. RFID happens to be one of the technologies we use, but the fundamental change and the reason there's an opportunity for companies like ourselves is that their existing ERP systems have no idea what to do with item level data.
Right.
They don't even think with serial numbers on every blue medium t-shirt. And so for us, it's that transformation from SKU level to item level, and having that dialogue with the client, a retailer or a brand, to say, this is the transformational thing you guys should be looking at. Mm-hmm. It's not just about, do I use RFID on things? It's about, am I going to start manage my inventory at the item level?
So let's double click into that, because that I think is a really important distinguishing factor. There's a lot of people who are out there leveraging RFID systems to just have a better job of knowing what they have and where it's located. We've already talked about that. But that means taking all those serialized G10s, rolling them up to a G10 and go, oh, I've got 4 of those, not 10. Okay, great. We make the on-hand change. What you just said, I think, is transformational, which is I can now do things like assign attributes to an individual SKU, not a SKU, but the item of that SKU. How many retailers do you think are really taking advantage of that? And number two, why are not more retailers being able to do that? Is it legacy systems? Is it, how do you think through that? Because that to me seems like the next big opportunity to leverage that serialized data.
It is, and it's one of those things that I'm not going to give away, since my competitors are probably on this, but basically there are opportunities to know if an event is taking place with a specific blue medium t-shirt that would allow me to address a lot of business benefit. Okay. Yep. But you've got to have all that information first. You've got to be able to have received it. You've got to be able to have done a stock count here, frequently. And what we're seeing is, again, back to that pyramid that we use, once you've got that fundamental in place, you're opening up a whole nother set of business opportunities of leveraging that information, whether it be loss prevention, whether it be customer engagement, whether it be fraud, whether it be, there's a number of things out there that we are currently, take, for example, it's not a secret, but we have a markdown application that's deployed in multiple retailers. Simply being able to know that I've got 3 medium blue t-shirts that need to be marked down, and I'm going to use Geiger counter to make sure I find them.
Yep.
Okay. Not a very sexy app, but a huge value for many retailers out there. And you couldn't really do it if you were operating only at the SKU level, not effectively, at least.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. So you can see in too, we have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
One from Robert Taylor. I think it's more of a comment than a question, but could be transformational with products that have expiration dates of various sizes. Obviously, in the food industry, people are definitely looking at that because that particular serialized G10, we know what date and time that tag got provided, and it potentially could have a when does it expire, when does it need to be marked down, et cetera. Great perspective. Julie's asking, how is location of product tracked by RFID? I think that allows a little bit with the Geiger counter function. Maybe explain that one a little bit more, Dean.
Yeah, I mean, there are technology. Let me just comment on Robert's comment.
Sure.
I think that there are a lot of things, believe it or not, in the retail sector outside of food that have expiration dates. For example, cosmetics. A bunch of cosmetics have expiration dates, just like packs of cheese.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whole concept of being able to address lot code and expiration date are data attributes that are having to become part of the product that we're involved in. Okay. I think it was Julie asked the question.
Yeah, Julie asked a question about product location.
Yeah, and RFID is really, really good at counting a lot of things fast. What it's not good at, especially now that the technology has evolved, is without a lot of money and a lot of infrastructure to be able to pinpoint something down to a very small number, a small area, a CEP, if you will, taking the military term. And so, so it can be done. But what we're finding is most retailers out there kind of know where everything is, and they're having labor issues now. The last thing, we have customers that are replenishing 1,000 to 2,000 items a day on the floor. They don't have time to go look on a handheld, to go look at a dot someplace on a screen. Mm-hmm. They know where they put away the children's wear, and now they use Geiger counter to zero in on the size 12 onesies and pull those to the floor through our replenishment app. So location is something that I think is going to continue to evolve. But again, we're very driven by customers, and customers, we want to be very sensitive to all their problems, not just their inventory problems. And one of their problems is they're just trying to staff their stores and minimize the impact on their store staff. And so a lot of what we do with our applications is trying to make their jobs more efficient, and to do it in a way where the user is not just inundated with information, but we try to boil it down and allow them to sort it and so on. And I think location is part of that. So I think we're a ways away from, there could be breakthroughs, but we're a ways away from coming up with something that a user will actually, other than a cool demo. If you think about doing this every day in a store that has 200,000 items in it, it doesn't seem practical to me right now.
So I want to jump to a question that wasn't asked, but it was kind of inferred by these questions. In the past, the GS1 encoding standards has basically been, I have basically the G10 of the item, I have a serialized number of that item. And everything else was a data. So it provided me not only the UPC of the item, but a unique number that connected those things together, right? Yep. In the future, we're going to see an expansion by GS1. This is not a GS1 commercial, so I'm not trying to do that. But there's going to be a standard that says, if we open up the amount of size that we could actually contain more things like food safety things, like expiration date, et cetera. Where do you think the industry is on that? Because I think it's going to be a very interesting. And the good news is what's available today doesn't change, so we don't have to migrate to that. But where do you see the vision of where your SML company is going to be in terms of leveraging that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we're wrestling through right now. I think that there's pros and cons of putting stuff in the cloud versus putting it in the tag. I tend to lean toward, all right, what has to change and what would adapt to change more effectively, since we don't really know. And to me, anytime you have to change something in the hardware, you have to change something in the software itself to read the items, that just seems like friction to me. Okay. It might be the best solution, but again, coming from where I have at Texas Instruments, I watched a lot of technologies that were better not get adopted because of the amount of inertia that it would take to break through that. And I think we're gonna have to work. I think there's gonna be markets where it makes a lot of sense. There's going to be markets where it just takes too much inertia to move it off of the 96-bit, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We're looking at both of them.
Yeah, well, clearly, as you think about new use cases, i.e., food, fast, ready to serve restaurants, expiration dates, et cetera, that's tougher to do with the way the standards are today. So those may be first movers, but for the core of what we're talking about here, which is apparel, general merchandise, electronics, those kind of things. Yeah, right. There's some reasons why you want to change.
One thing to think about is that let's say we went to a 128 or 256-bit tag.
Yeah.
Everybody who encodes tags would have to change their software to encode it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They would have to change the system behind it to be able to handle. Now every single EPC would have attribute data that would have to be encoded into the tag.
Yep.
And so if you just start at the headwaters of this process, there's change, and I'm sure that some technology providers will move down that path. But for mass market, there's a lot of change that has to take place. So,
yep.
Yeah.
So it actually took 25 minutes for JW to actually ask a question. That's the latest he's ever been. So JW, I'm picking you on a little bit, but JW is he participates a lot of these and asks very, very good questions. And I think his question is a pretty good one, which is the GS1 standards and leveraging EPCIS, which is the kind of, it's been around for a lot of years, the way that serialized data gets transferred. He's specifically asking about potentially leveraging that from a claims compliance. Is it too early to tell whether that's going to be successful, or would you plan on that kind of being the right approach?
Well, I think that, back when we were establishing the standards in 99 through 2001, EPCIS was becoming was part of that dialogue. And I think the challenge has always been, what's the business value in the context of every customer has their own ERP systems? So is it going to be food where EPCIS is going to be, or pharmaceuticals, or something else other than the mass market that we're currently involved in? Mm-hmm. And I think the jury's out on that, but when you think about to truly leverage EPCIS, we have one customer that we've got thousands of stores live. They have hundreds of factories, hundreds of DCs. For you to truly use EPCIS and global location numbers and so on, you've got to put in a ton of item level infrastructure to make that happen. And if you don't, then you've got gaps basically in some of those things. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over time.
Got it. From your seat, what are the next set of use cases? Because claims is obviously one of those. I mentioned asset protection before is one of those. There's a lot of things that from your set, and again, I'm not asking you to share anything that's not, public. I'm not looking for you to release competitive information. I know you won't. But you've made a number of acquisitions and or engagements. I believe the location in London is starting to look at running actual RFID product through a tunnel to be able to capture that. We're seeing the work that you're doing in store with with the company you just partnered with. So you've been doing this for a long time. Where do you see the big bets coming in the future?
Well, I mean, one of the ones that's been ignored is inbound into distribution centers. Okay. And, the assumption is that everybody's sending you what they tell you they're sending you, and that the tags work. And I think it's, as we start getting to clients that are limited in what they can do in the store because their inbound processes are telling them the wrong number. Okay. And so, if I was at 65% inventory accuracy, who cares if I was off by 5% on my inbound? But when I'm at 98 and I'm trying to get to 99, that could be a big difference. Okay. I just saw Robert's note. It's at the case level, but case with the items on the inside is what I'm talking about. So we've got multiple projects around the world, some really big ones and there's other examples out there that have been publicized where, I think that's the next thing, Mike. If I was to pick one thing, it's the thing that would make the biggest impact in the whole industry is just having all of these DCs know exactly what they're receiving and make sure that all of the tags work on the stuff that they're getting coming in. And we have seen during COVID, we've seen a decrease in tag quality. Okay. A lot of players are trying to provide tags, and there's no way for the people that are buying them to know if they're any good or not.
So is that implying that we're going away from Auburn University ARC standards, or we just are those particular quality of those standards?
ARC standards are really around performance. This is around, did it get encoded right?
Oh, gotcha. All right. Okay. All right. So it's not the performance of the tag. It's did we encode it correctly, and does it have the right information?
I've got one example where people are putting tags on product with the EPC logo and no RFID tag inside the sticker. That's a real example. Okay. So so it looks like it's a tag. It smells like it's a tag, but it's not an RFID tag. So we're going to continue to see shenanigans like that, and brands and retailers are going to become, as they become more dependent on accurate information, are going to be looking at, I think, some of those things for compliance checking.
Yeah, and to your point, if you see it and it's a problem at the store, it's not been encoded correctly at the store.
Too late.
It's way too late. It's fine. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, right? You got to catch it upstream in the supply chain. Obviously, that's the key to this thing. So catching it inbound at the DC at the latest would be certainly something would be valuable. Yeah. Talk to us about what you can about any potential CPG suppliers that are using your solutions to make sure that what they're putting in a box destined to a potential retailer customer is the right stuff. How are you seeing that kind of playing out?
I would say it's been a continued interest for years. The challenge is putting in place solutions in places that don't have a lot of technology is difficult. And I think that's why what we're seeing is brands and retailers moving toward the step before them, which is that DC, right? They can control the technology, usually has a lot of technology in it, even if it's just Wi-Fi and some kind of a networking system. You can use handhelds, you can use tunnels, you can use things like that. So, I think going all the way to, we've got multiple projects where we're in at factories. Okay. I will tell you that it is difficult, even with local teams, to be able to work through some factories don't allow there to be public Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi at all in the factory, because they don't want people surfing on their phone. So again, there's just a little bit more headwind in doing factories. It's not a technology issue per se. It's do they have the infrastructure in place to be able to support it? So
got it.
And they're getting very little out of it. So I think what's going to happen is the inbound deployments are going to drive that technology upstream one step further, just like what we saw for Walmart. when they held compliance on consumer packaged goods stuff.
Yeah. There's this phenomenon in the CPG industry called the tipping point, which is when you have enough retailers asking to have things RFID tagged at source. At what point in time do you just say, I don't want to have two piles of inventory that's the same product, although this one's RFID tagged and this one's not? Let's go ahead and do that migration. And then Auburn quotes the number 60%. I think that's a pretty close approximation for when I was with Procter & Gamble. It's like, if we have that much coming in, let's just tag it all. Then people start to say, well, if it's all tagged from us, then what can we do with it internally? And I think that's one of the things that's definitely going to kind of play out. The other ones is, and I know that your team was at Auburn a few months ago when we had folks from the supplier community, specifically Hanes, talk about the incredible, we're all RFID tagged, yet our claims compliance is still on an upward trajectory. Why? Because we're not taking advantage of that yet. That claims thing, which is, Dean, I sent you 27 of those and you're claiming it. We have no argument today. Maybe talk a little bit about the role that RFID plays to ensure that is actually, you did receive it and here's how you did it.
Yeah, I mean, we had a brand owner that their whole business case justification was getting rid of claims from Macy's. I mean, high six figures for a solution. And it was all about the fact that Macy's was doing a good job of looking at claims and charging significantly for that. And so I think it's a natural, if you start measuring something and doing it in a way that has integrity, then you have an opportunity of doing two things. One, giving someone the opportunity to fix it. And two, making them pay for the fact that it did impact your business. And right now, what we're seeing is I would say that every one of our store deployment customers is now either already or in the process or thinking about the fact that this is an important issue. And whether they set up a profit and loss center to go after folks or not is a different issue. And that's, there's a whole spectrum of what people want to do with that. But I think in general, most of them just want people to tag the product and ship the product as they said they did.
Yeah. Just a wild question. I've talked about this with a few people, but we'll go ahead and make this one public. Do you ever see us using item level and then eventually case level RFID as the official agreement that product actually got? Because your example of they shipped a bunch of socks, I'll make it up, socks that weren't encoded. Well, then we didn't receive those socks. So we're going to deduct for those. That puts pressure in the system to make sure that everything's coded correctly up front, et cetera, because if a reader at a retailer, we don't see it, we're not going to pay for it. Do you ever see it go into that level where you could actually potentially do? Yeah,
I do, because the impact to the business of not having those socks tagged is non-zero. I mean, there is a direct impact that either somebody's going to have to tag them, or they're going to be invisible through the RFID process all the way through sale and loss prevention.
Right. Yep. So completely switching gears, I've got a couple others. And by the way, if anybody else has any more questions, please forward them. I've got a couple more questions left. This one's a little bit out of the blue. I've been on some messaging threads with both some retailers in the United States and also some folks over in Europe. And I don't think this is a new topic, but it's an interesting one, which is, if we have RFID systems and we have categories and departments and potentially, like in some cases, whole stores that are RFID tagged, why do we still go through a yearly inventory audit where we're counting every single pair of socks and every little thing that we've got? What's the roadmap to automate that? Because to me, that's like a yearly process that we do that's not done very well. And by the way, we're doing RFID at a weekly basis. So I would guess our inventory is much more accurate than it is on a once-a-year audit. Any perspective that you have on that?
I mean, we've seen a spectrum of customers. We have what we are finding is the small to medium retailers are much more willing to go to their auditors and say, "Let me explain to you how this works." And we have one retailer that actually took their auditors into a store and did a count.
Hmm.
And then they picked a category and they went and counted it by hand and realized it was dead on.
Dead on.
Okay. And so what we're finding is they have a better chance of making their RFID count on December 28th, their ledger for their balance sheet. Larger retailers, much more complicated. So we have large retailers who have gone through that. We have some retailers who have been with us for years and they still can't convince other members of the corporate staff that this really is better. And for sometimes good reasons. For example, if I have, 98% of my product is tagged, what our customers are saying is, well, at least let's use that.
Right.
Okay. Because you can't get a false positive. It's much better than what I counted 6 months ago by hand by folks who didn't care about doing this anyway.
Right.
Okay. And so we're seeing success in the middle there. And then we have others that are like, I'm not even taking it forward. Right. It's a career limiting move for me to get into somebody else's business. And I'm just not going to go there. So that's the spectrum we're seeing. And I think over time, it's a big cost. The Regis Wish combination, the consolidation of those two companies, it's a huge cost. And specialty retailers where nearly everything is tagged, it should be a very easy transition to just take the December 28th count as your balance sheet.
Yep.
Position. At least for your stores. Yeah.
I think it's got to get there eventually. How do you do that and do it in the right way? And things that are Sarbanes-Oxley.
It's probably the most one of the biggest things I've learned in the last 10 years or 13 years now doing retail apparel is that it's the most complicated discussion that takes place internally.
Yeah. Do you think that's a cost versus retail cost accounting discussion, or it's just, no, we've always put people in the stores count this stuff?
It's kind of that. I mean, it's kind of that. The loss prevention teams tend to have a say but then the CFO, it depends. It gets back to now you got to talk to these auditors who tend to have we have a different relationship with them. And so it's just very, very complicated and one that we've just supported on the peripheral to make sure that our teams that we're working with in the retailer have everything they need to present the truth and the facts as to what's going on.
Got it. I want to come full circle back on a question we asked and we started to talk a little bit about before. And I actually see Robert has asked a question related to that as well as returns.
Yeah.
Specifically, let's just talk about how RFID technology can help the returns process. Let's just say the returns where the RFID today is attached to packaging and not incorporated into the actual product. That's a different question, Robert. So we'll get to that one in a second. But talk to us about that. So if I'm one of your retailers and I'm using this and somebody returns something, how does your system account for that to make sure that it correctly identifies it coming back into inventory?
Yeah. So we've got customers that have used let's take the in-store scenario. Someone brings something back and it has a ticket on it still, right? So it's still got the RFID tag. We have the ability to bring that in inventory immediately. Okay. And to do it, we could do it at the basket level, right? So as you see at most tills, there's a basket of returns, right? Just throw the things in there, scan them and bring them back in inventory. Well, the example, they bring it back, there's no ticket. Well, in most cases, the retailer has the ability to print out a non-RFID ticket anyway. You stick on an RFID tag and you do a scan and code and you bring it in inventory, right?
Yep.
All of those events are captured. So if someone was looking at, if they were interested in that, they could have a BI report on what they returned. But nobody seems to be that interested in that right now, but it could be. The biggest thing that's going on right now that we see is mass returns in distribution centers. Huge problem. Okay. And, we've got deployments with some brands where dramatically changing the way they think about managing returns. When, some brands are getting hundreds of thousands of items a year and still processing them the same way they always have. Okay. And
Wow.
so, and then I think there's some other returns kind of things that are coming down the pipe that we think will also add value for some of the issues that are out there for that. So, but DC and store, sorry about that. My dog's barking at the UPS guy.
He needs to go outside.
No, he wants to go eat the UPS guy because he's
the UPS guy.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly.
The
But
Prime
anyway,
guys, they're showing up with those three boxes that two of them
Exactly.
are your return. Okay.
Exactly. So anyway, I think returns is something, the DC was really interesting, to look at what these brands are having to do for returns. And, again, think about, understanding what it is and what grade it is to know if you can get it back in the market versus not. Most brands have covenants with their retailers about how many of the poor grade product that you can ship back to me. And there's no way of measuring that really other than by hand today. So there's a number of things that, and down the road, I think we're going to get to beyond returns. We're going to get to the resale market and that whole market that is going to potentially could leverage RFID to automate that secondary life of product and ultimately recycling and some of those things.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. We are just about out of time, Dean. I want to ask you one kind of follow-up questions. Anything else that you see in the future? And is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't? Kind of a follow-up kind of closing question.
I think one of the things that we're pondering is I think we're about to see continued consolidation in the retail space. We're already seeing that. And that consolidation impacts a lot of different components. And one of those components is technology investment.
Okay.
And where you might have had, 3 or 4 brands that were underfunded, they couldn't invest and so on. We're seeing a growing number of retailer consolidation plays where they're stepping back and saying, if we're going to do this, let's do this with the right technology from the beginning. And I think that play is could be very interesting for the market, for all of us that are in this market, because it's unprecedented. I've never seen this before, where I've seen this level of consolidation. So it's going to be very interesting. I think that's the one thing that is on top of mind as we start looking at what's going on. Got it.
Man, that's a great perspective, Dean. Thank you so much. I know you've had a lot of stuff going on, both at work and at home. I am so thankful you had an opportunity to spend some time with us. I think you're one of the obviously premier industry leaders in this space, not only from a technical perspective, from a business perspective. So thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We definitely appreciate it, Matt.